Welcome to the Office on Violence Against Women FY20 Improving Criminal Justice Responses to Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault and Stalking Grant Program, also known as ICJR, and formerly known as the Arrest Program Pre-Application Webinar. This webinar will be presented by the OVW ICJR Unit team members, Brenda Otterman and Aisha Battle. Although we will not review every page and section of the solicitation, there have been a number of important changes to the FY20 ICJR solicitation, and we want to make sure that you are aware of those changes. We highly encourage you to read the solicitation in its entirety before beginning your application. For information on how to apply, we have provided you with a link in this slide. www.justice.gov/OVW/how-apply. Be sure to use this link. It has valuable tools such as links to the Solicitation Companion Guide and other resources for your application. We have also provided the ICJR solicitation link as well, which is found under www.justice.gov/OVW. Go to how to apply for OVW funding and then open the solicitation. The most important thing you should do before applying is to read the ICJR solicitation in its entirety, from beginning to end, whether you are a new or continuation applicant. We can't stress this enough. The FY20 solicitation is significantly different from previous years, and for continuation applicants, this will be noticeable. Also, be prepared to hear us repeat things several times during this webinar that applicants oftentimes overlook. The ICJR program is the largest and one of the oldest discretionary grant programs at the Office on Violence Against Women. The ICJR program is authorized by 34 U.S.C. sections 10461 through 10465 and implemented through regulations at 28 CFR Part 90, Subpart D. Over the years, the ICJR program has changed names, but the purpose has always stayed the same. It encourages state, local, and tribal governments and courts to treat domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking as serious violations of criminal law, requiring the coordinated involvement of the entire criminal justice system. Pursuant to 34 U.S.C. Section 10461, Subpart C, the following entities are eligible to apply to the ICJR program: states, Indian tribal governments, state, local, tribal, or territorial courts, including juvenile courts, units of local government, state, tribal, or territorial domestic violence or sexual assault coalitions, and victim service providers. The solicitation has additional information and definitions for each of the eligible applicants. Make sure you read the eligibility information on page 10 of the solicitation. Please make sure to read the footnotes as well. If you are a continuation grantee, it is important to know that the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2013 changed the definition of unit of local government. Any entity that is eligible for this program based on its status as a nonprofit organization must be an organization that is described in Section 501(c)(3) of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 and is exempt from taxation under Section 501A of that code. OVW cannot make an award to any nonprofit organization that does not submit a 501(c)(3) determination letter from the Internal Revenue Service. The Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2013 changed the definition of unit of local government, making police departments, pretrial service agencies, district or city attorney's offices, sheriff's departments, parole and probation departments, and universities non-eligible entities to apply as a lead applicant. Non-eligible entities cannot apply directly under their agency name because they are not units of local government for the purposes of the ICJR program unless they meet the definition of unit of local government. Per the ICJR program solicitation, the definition of unit of local government is set forth in 34 USC section 12291 subpart A 40. Applicants from typically non-eligible entities that want to assert unit of local government must include in their application proof of such status. If these agencies or organizations do not meet the definition of unit of local government, they are not eligible to apply directly for funding, but may assume a partner role and responsibility for the development and implementation of the project. They may apply through a state, local, territorial, or tribal court, an Indian tribal government, or a unit of local government. Non-eligible entities can fill out the application, assume responsibility for the development and implementation of the project, but it has to be submitted through their state, Indian tribal government, state, local, tribal, and territorial courts, including juvenile courts, or a unit of local government. Failure to comply with this will disqualify your application during the review process. For the purposes of this program, please remember police departments, sheriff's departments, prosecuting attorney's offices, health departments, parole and probation departments, and universities are not unit of local government. OVW requires that each applicant develop a MOU with its project partners. Applicants that are victim service providers are required to enter into a formal collaboration with a state, unit of local government, or tribal government, as well as any specific government organizations that are necessary for the implementation of the proposed project. If your proposal addresses a culturally specific or underserved population, a population-specific organization must also be included in your MOU. You must involve the government partner in the development and implementation of the project. If you fail to include the mandatory partners, your application will be removed from further consideration. OVW requires that each applicant develop an MOU with its project partners. Applicants that are states, units of local governments, tribal governments, or courts must enter into a formal collaboration with one or more nonprofit, non-governmental victim service providers that serve victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. If your proposal addresses a culturally specific or underserved population, a population-specific organization must also be included in your MOU. Applicants must also include other governmental organizations that are necessary for the implementation. For example, if the applicant is a county and proposes to improve investigations of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking, the county must include, at a minimum, a victim service provider and a law enforcement agency. You must involve the victim service provider in the development and implementation of the project. If you fail to include the mandatory partners, your application will be removed from further consideration. The ICJR program has two certification requirements: certification of eligibility and HIV certification. At the time of submission, applicants must submit a properly executed certification of eligibility letter. You must read pages 11 through 13 of the solicitation, as well as read the certification of eligibility instructions and sample letters on the OVW webpage. State and unit of local government applicants are not required, but are strongly encouraged to include an HIV certification, HIV assurance, or HIV exemption letter at the time of submission. You must read pages 8 and 9 of the solicitation, as well as read the HIV certification, assurance, or exemption instructions and sample letters on the OVW webpage. Please note that tribes, courts, victim service provider, and coalition applicants are exempt from the HIV requirement and do not have to submit any documentation. In addition to meeting the eligible entity requirement to apply for funding, all applicants must certify that their laws or official policies meet the ICJR statutory requirements detailed in 34 USC 10461 subpart C in order to receive funding through the ICJR program. All certifications and other eligibility-related documents must be current, developed in accordance with the FY20 ICJR solicitation, and signed by the Chief Executive of the state, Indian tribal government, unit of local government, or court, and submitted at the time of application submission. The certification of eligibility signatory is based on the service area of the proposed project. For example, if you are proposing a statewide project, the governor would likely be the chief executive to sign. A chief judge or court administrator for a court applicant, and a mayor, county executive, or tribal chairman for a unit of local government or Indian tribal government applicant. Instructions and sample certification of eligibility letters are on the Resources for Applicants page under the Program Specific Resources heading on the OVW website. Applicants whose submissions do not meet all of the eligibility requirements at the time of application deadline will not be considered for funding. Submission of state, tribal, territorial, or local statuses, HIV letters, laws, and policies in lieu of a letter with proper certification signed by the chief executive will not satisfy these statutory requirements. OVW will not redirect documents that are inadvertently submitted with the wrong application. For example, an ICJR certification letter submitted with a transitional housing program application will not be transferred to the ICJR program application. Activities supported by the ICJR program are determined by statute and federal regulation. Victim service providers and coalitions applying as the lead applicant may seek funding to address purpose areas 5, 10, and 17 only. Applicants must address at least one statutory purpose area listed on pages 2 through 4 of the solicitation. In FY20, the ICJR solicitation changed the purpose areas that victim service providers and coalitions can apply to. If you are a continuation applicant that is doing work under a purpose area that is open to government and court applicants only, your government partner will now be the lead applicant, and you as the victim service provider or coalition will be the project partner. In an effort to distribute funds across the country, applicants applying to address Purpose Area 10 to establish a new Family Justice Center or to co-locate services will be given priority over applicants that have been funded to do Purpose Area 10 for 2 or more times. Please note that beginning in FY 2020, OVW is limiting funding under the Purpose Area to 2 funding cycles. This means that FY 2020 will be the final funding opportunity for continuation applications to be funded to implement Purpose Area 10 that have received 1 or more awards to address Purpose Area 10 previously. Given the intensive nature of implementing Purpose Area 22, the only purpose areas that can be combined with it are Purpose Areas 3 and 16. In other words, applicants that apply to implement Purpose Area 22 are limited to addressing Purpose Area 22, 3, and 16 and should list no more than these 3 purpose areas on the summary data sheet. The FY20 ICJR solicitation includes 2 OVW priority areas. Both are relevant to government and court applicants. Applications proposing activities in these priority areas will be given special consideration during the review process. Please do not confuse the statutory purpose areas, which you are required to address at least one of the 22, with the OVW priority areas, which you are not required to address. The first priority area is reducing violent crimes against women and promoting victim safety, and can be found on page 5 of the solicitation. In FY20, OVW will give special consideration to the applications that meaningfully address one or more of the following statutory purpose areas. Purpose areas 1, pro-arrest programs and policies. Purpose area 3, specialized units. Purpose area 6, improving judicial handling of cases. Purpose area 8, developing policies and trainings for working with older individuals and individuals with disabilities. Purpose area 10, co-located services and/or family justice center. Purpose area 11, developing policies and training for recognizing, investigating, or prosecuting instances of sexual assault. Purpose area 14, training for prosecutors. Purpose area 19, improving investigation and prosecution of sexual assault cases. And purpose area 22, reducing domestic and dating violence homicides. In considering whether an application meaningfully addresses purpose areas 1, 3, 6, 8, 10, 11, 14, 19, and/or 22, no less than 50% of proposed goals, objectives, activities, and budget must support law enforcement, prosecution, and/or court partners. Funding can support salaries, fringe, officer overtime, supplies, equipment, training, and travel costs. The second OVW priority area is new in FY20 and is an area OVW and the Department of Justice have a special interest in. Special consideration will be given to applications proposing activities in rural communities that seek to improve the investigation and prosecution of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking by supporting law enforcement, prosecution, and victim services. Also new in FY20, the ICJR program created a program-specific priority area focused on sexual assault. Pursuant to 34 U.S.C. Section 10461, Subpart G, no less than 25% of the total amount appropriated for the ICJR program shall be available for projects that address sexual assault, including stranger rape, acquaintance rape, alcohol or drug facilitated rape, and rape within the context of an intimate partner relationship. In FY20, ICJR will give priority to applicants that meaningfully address sexual assault. In considering whether an application meaningfully addresses sexual assault, an application must address purpose areas 11 and 19. Applicants may also address purpose areas 3, 17, and/or 18. Pursuant to 34 U.S.C. Section 10462B, when making Improving Criminal Justice Responses Program awards, OVW will give priority to applicants that do not currently provide for centralized handling of cases involving domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking by police, prosecutors, and courts. Applicants that demonstrate a commitment to strong enforcement of laws and prosecution of cases involving domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking, including the enforcement of protection orders for other states and jurisdictions, including tribal jurisdictions. Applicants that have established cooperative agreements or can demonstrate effective ongoing collaboration arrangements with neighboring jurisdictions to facilitate the enforcement of protection orders from other states and jurisdictions, including tribal jurisdictions, and applicants that intend to utilize grant funds to develop and install data collection and communication systems, including computerized systems and training on how to use these systems effectively to link police, prosecutors, courts, and tribal jurisdictions for the purpose of identifying and tracking protection orders and violation of protection orders in those jurisdictions where such systems do not exist or are not fully effective. In FY 2020, applications submitted by states, Indian tribal governments, state and local courts, including juvenile courts and units of local government addressing one or more statutory priorities above will receive 1 additional point during the recommendation process. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. Information on activities that compromise victim safety and recovery and undermine offender accountability can be found in the Solicitation Companion Guide located on the OVW website. Applications that propose any activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or undermine offender accountability may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from consideration entirely. On pages 6 and 7 of the solicitation, we have listed 6 activities that have been found to be out of scope for the ICJR program. Applications that propose activities that are deemed to be substantially out of scope may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from consideration entirely. Applications that propose out of scope activities may receive a point deduction during the review process. Applications that are determined to be substantially outside of the scope of the ICJR program will not be considered for funding. It is important to note ICJR funds can only be used to serve adolescent adult victims aged 11 and older. Funds cannot be used to serve victims under the age of 11. There are 6 unallowable activities that are applicable to almost all OVW programs. The unallowable activities are lobbying, except with explicit statutory authorization, fundraising, purchase of real property, physical modifications to buildings, including minor renovations like painting or carpeting, and construction. In FY 2020, OVW will accept applications from new applicants, meaning those who have never received funding under the ICJR program or had previous funding that expired more than 12 months ago. Continuation applicants are applicants that are existing or recently closed awards. Due to the change in definition of unit of local government, some previous recipients of ICJR awards may not be eligible to apply for continuation funding as the lead applicant, such as police departments and prosecutors' offices. These entities can apply through their unit of local government. If you are an entity that is no longer eligible but can assert unit of local government status, you must provide supporting documentation with your application. Grant recipients who received new or continuation funding under the ICJR program for 36 months in FY 2018 or FY 2019 are not eligible to apply for funding. Please note the continuation applicants that have 50% or more of funds remaining as of March 31st, 2020 without adequate justification may not be considered for funding or may receive a reduced award amount if selected for funding in FY 20. All awards are subject to the availability of appropriated funds and any modifications or additional requirements that may be imposed by law. There is no guarantee that funds will be available in the future. Therefore, OVW encourages you to develop a plan to sustain project activities if federal funding through the ICJR program were no longer available. For applicants proposing to address purpose areas 1 through 21, the grant award period is 36 months. Your application and budget must reflect 36 months of project activity, and the total estimated funding, which is block 15 on the SF424, must also reflect 36 months. Generally, the award period will start on October 1, 2020. Carefully consider the resources needed to successfully implement the proposed project and present a realistic budget that accurately reflects project cost. Also remember the various partners associated with your application. The funding levels on under the ICJR program for purpose areas 1 through 21 for FY 2020 are listed on page 7 of the solicitation. Keep in mind that your service area population will be the service area that your specific project is proposing. So if you propose to implement a project in a city, county, or multiple counties, that you use the correct population number for the project. The ICJR unit changed both the budget caps and population ranges in FY 20. Additionally, if someone is applying to be a statewide project, we removed the population cap. A service area population up to 400,000 is eligible to apply for up to $500,000. A service area population of 400,001 to 700,000 is eligible to apply for up to $750,000 total. And a service area population over 701,000 is eligible to apply for up to $1 million. Statewide projects are eligible to apply for up to $1 million regardless of population. OVW has the discretion to award grants for greater or lesser amounts than requested and to negotiate the scope of work and budget with applicants prior to the award of the grant. For applicants 22, the ICJR unit changed both the project period and budget caps in FY 20. Recipients addressing Purpose Area 22 are required to engage in a 12-month planning phase before implementing project activities. During the 12-month planning phase, recipients will work with OVW and the Improving Criminal Justice Response's technical assistance providers to conduct a community assessment that will inform which domestic violence risk or lethality tool is most appropriate for the service area. At the end of the planning phase, the grantee will submit a 36-month implementation plan. Because Purpose Area 22 requires substantial planning, the grant award period for applicants proposing to address Purpose Area 22 is 48 months. Your application and budget must reflect 48 months of project activity, and the total estimated funding located on Block 15 on the SF424 must also reflect 48 months. The funding levels under the ICJR program for Purpose Area 22 for FY 2020 are as listed on page 8. Keep in mind that your service area population will be the service area that your specific project is proposing. So if you're proposing to implement a project in a city, county, or multiple counties, that you use the correct population number for the project. A service area population up to 400,000 is eligible to apply for up to $750,000. A service area population of 401,000 to 700,000 is eligible to apply for up to $1 million total, and a service area population over 701,000 is eligible to apply for up to $1.25 million. Statewide projects are eligible to apply for up to $1.25 million regardless of population. Despite these changes, please understand that OVW has the discretion to award grants for greater or lesser amounts than requested and to negotiate scope of work and budget with applicants prior to award of a grant. The ICJR program requires the following 4 documents be submitted: the project narrative, The project narrative can be no more than 20 pages. If you submit more than 20 pages of the project narrative, that information will not be reviewed. The budget detail worksheet and narrative. For applicants proposing to address purpose areas 1 through 21, the award period is 36 months. So please make sure your budget detail worksheet and narrative reflect 36 months. For applicants proposing to address purpose area 22, the award period is 48 months. So please make sure your budget detail worksheet and narrative reflect 48 months. The MOU. In rare circumstances that a court is prohibited from entering into an MOU, a letter of commitment may be submitted. The certification of eligibility letter, which must be submitted along with the application, and you can find a sample certification of eligibility letter on the OVW website, Resources for Applicants page, under the Program Specific Resources heading. The summary data sheet is 1 to 4 pages in length and may be single or double spaced. This does not count towards the 20-page limit for the project narrative. Please provide a statement as to whether you are addressing one or both of the OVW priority areas. Identify the project focus, such as law enforcement, prosecution, courts, Family Justice Center, training, special projects within the scope of the ICJR program, and provide the start and end dates of the next state or tribal legislative session. A change to the FY 2020 solicitation is that the proposal abstract will be scored. The proposal abstract should be no more than 2 pages and is double-spaced. It provides a short and accurate summary of the proposed project, including who will be involved with the proposed project, what will be done as primary activities, what products will be produced, the service area where the proposed project will take place, and who will be impacted by the proposed project. Applicants should not summarize past accomplishments in this section. After finalizing the project narrative, we encourage you to compare the abstract and the project narrative to ensure the two are aligned. The project narrative may not exceed 20 pages in length, is double-spaced, and is comprised of the following 3 sections: the purpose of your application, what will be done, and who will implement the project. Proof of 501c3 status applies to nonprofit organizations only. As noted under eligible applicants, an entity that is eligible for the Improving Criminal Justice Responses Program, based on its status as a nonprofit organization, must be an organization that is described in Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 and is exempt from taxation under Section 501 Subpart A of the Code. All such applicants are required to submit a determination letter from the Internal Revenue Service recognizing their tax-exempt status. OVW cannot make an award to a nonprofit organization that does not submit a 501c3 determination letter from the Internal Revenue Service. An applicant that is a nonprofit organization may be required to make certain disclosures relating to the processes it uses to determine the compensation of its officers, directors, trustees, and key employees. Under certain circumstances, a nonprofit organization that provides unreasonably high compensation to certain persons may subject both the organization's managers and those who receive compensation to additional federal taxes. A rebuttable presumption of the reasonableness of a nonprofit organization's compensation arrangements, however, may be available if the nonprofit organization satisfies certain rules set out in the Internal Revenue Service's regulations with regard to its compensation decisions. Each applicant must state at the time of its application in the summary data sheet mentioned earlier whether the applicant is a nonprofit organization that uses the Internal Revenue Service's 3-step safe harbor procedure to establish a rebuttable presumption that its executives' compensation is reasonable. If the applicant states that it uses a safe harbor procedure, then it must disclose in an attachment to its application the process it uses to determine the compensation of its officers, directors, trustees, and key employees. At a minimum, the disclosure must describe in pertinent detail: 1, the composition of the body that reviews and approves compensation arrangements for covered persons; 2, the methods and practices used by the applicant nonprofit organization to ensure that no individual with the conflict of interest participates as a member of the body that reviews and approves the compensation arrangement for a covered person. 3, the appropriate data as to comparability of compensation that is obtained in the advance and relied upon by the body that reviews and approves compensation arrangements for covered persons. And 4, the written or electronic records that the applicant maintains as a concurrent document of the decisions with respect to compensation of covered persons made by the body that reviews and approves such compensation arrangements, including records of deliberation and of the basis for decisions. The ICJR unit team asked that applicants do the following as it pertains to their budget. Please stay within the budget caps, and please be mindful of the budget caps. For applicants proposing to address purpose areas 1 through 21, be sure your budget reflects 36 months. For applicants proposing to address purpose area 22, be sure your budget reflects 48 months. The budget should not contain any items that are not detailed in the project narrative. A sample budget detail worksheet is available on the Resources for Applicants page. Grantees under this program may not issue a solicitation or request for proposal redistributing these funds after receiving an award. The next couple of slides are going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents that our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, also known as GFMD, reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior year applications that could help with expediting our review process. So for today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you a link to detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that's part of your application package. The first thing we'll highlight are the items identified in the summary data sheet, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, 3 items we would like to discuss are the nonprofit organization requirement, the single audit response, and the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure. If you are an eligible victim service provider to receive ICJR funding, you are required to submit a determination letter from the IRS recognizing your tax-exempt status. OVW cannot make an award to any nonprofit organization that does not submit a 501c3 determination letter. We highlight this specifically because applicants are not including this as part of their application, and this further delays our review. Please ensure that this document is included if applicable. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether you have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, they indicate that on the data summary sheet and also specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, we are finding that applicants do not always include this information and leave out whether or not they have met the threshold or the end date of the last fiscal year is not included. Please ensure this question is answered in its entirety on the summary data sheet. So another item we'd like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you must reference the additional information section that provides the required disclosure letter. We'd like to highlight that there are 4 parts of this disclosure letter that must be provided to OVW in order to comply with this requirement. The sample letter outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure, so please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item we'd like to discuss are the financial accounting practices, which assist us during the pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 10 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We've noticed that from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires us to reach out to the applicant, which may delay recommendations. Some of the most common issues that we've encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they do not provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. Another example of incomplete responses include question number 3, where the applicant does not provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. So these are just a few examples, but basically, please make sure you read each part of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. This next slide will quickly highlight some resources that are available that should be used as you're creating the budget that's submitted with the application. We recently developed an in-depth training webinar on creating a budget for OBW applicants. We're hoping to reduce any challenges you may face with the budget and make it clear what we look for when we review your budget. So this webinar provides some insight as to what we consider during our review. When you click the link at the top of the slide, it will take you to a list of resources for applicants. The first section, titled Budget Information, has multiple links, including the training webinar called Creating a Budget, and another link with the sample budget detail worksheet that you should use in conjunction with the webinar, as we pull a lot of examples from the sample budget. Next up is the Uniform Guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200. Then another resource is the DOJ Financial Guide, as well as the program-specific solicitation. If you need assistance finding these resources, please feel free to contact our help desk. Which brings me to the last slide with our contact information. We know this can be a lot of information to process. So if you have any questions specifically about financial information we just discussed, please feel free to contact the GFMD help desk at 888-514-8556 or by email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Both new and continuation applicants are required to set aside $20,000 total for training and technical assistance. $10,000 should be set aside for the lead applicant and $10,000 for project partners. Applicants from Alaska, Hawaii, and/or the U.S. territories are required to set aside $15,000. This only applies to applicants from Alaska, Hawaii, and the U.S. territories. The $10,000 and $15,000 set-asides is for the entire 36 to 48 months. Your MOU is the foundation of your project and should be strong enough to stand on its own by the time you apply for this solicitation. If your MOU is still a work in progress, you may encounter problems such as securing commitments from potential project partners and obtaining the necessary and required signatures from the authorized representatives from each partnering agency. It is recommended the applicant should have commitments from project partners in place as soon as possible, but at least several weeks before you apply to the ICJR program. Applicants are required to submit an MOU that demonstrates they have consulted and coordinated in a meaningful way with required partners and, if appropriate, population-specific organizations for sexual assault and/or domestic violence programs, as well as other required government partners. This is the foundation of your project. For the purposes of this application, the MOU is a document containing the terms of the partnership and the roles and responsibilities between two or more parties. The MOU must be a single document and should be signed and dated by the authorized representative of each proposed partner agency during the development of the application. The MOU can include multiple signature pages as long as each page includes the name and title of each signing party. Previously funded applicants must develop a new MOU that reflects the continuation of project activities and includes current dates and signatures from all relevant project partners. The MOU must identify the partners and provide a brief history of the collaborative relationship among those partners, including when and under what circumstances the relationship began and when each partner entered into that relationship. Please note, letters of support may not be submitted in lieu of a MOU. The MOU must clearly state the roles and responsibilities of each organization or agency would assume to ensure the success of the proposed project. Include project-specific partners, describe the resources each partner would contribute to the project, either through time, in-kind contribution, or grant funds. For example, office space, project staff, and training. Specify the extent of each partner's participation in developing the application. Demonstrate a commitment on the part of all project partners to work together to achieve stated project goals. Indicate approval of the proposed project budget by all signing parties. And identify the representatives of the planning and development team who will be responsible for developing and implementing project activities, and describe how they will work together with project staff. Please note that the MOU must be on letterhead of the government applicant partner and signed by the designated official signatory. The important dates section can be found on pages 25 through 28 of the solicitation. It covers in detail the registration process and explains OVW's policy for applicants without internet access, on duplicate applications, experiencing unforeseen technical issues, late submissions, and extraordinary natural or man-made disasters. Information about the letter of intent can be found on page 14 of the solicitation. Applicants intending to apply for FY 2020 funding under this program are strongly encouraged to submit a letter of intent. The letter should state that the applicant is registered and current with SAM and with grants.gov. The letter should be submitted to OVW at ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov by January 10th, 2020. This letter will not obligate the applicant to submit an application. A sample letter of intent can be found in the Resources for Applicants section on the OVW website. Applicants are strongly encouraged to submit their applications at least 48 but no less than 24 hours before the deadline. And after application submission, AORs should closely monitor their emails for any notification from grants.gov about possible failed submission. The AOR will receive a minimum of 2 emails from grants.gov. One will confirm receipt of the application package. The other will either notify the AOR that the application was successfully submitted, or it will notify the AOR that there was an error with the application submission. Tips for a successful application. Read the solicitation in its entirety before applying. Follow the solicitation. Provide relevant, detailed information about the proposed project. The information presented in the application will be the only information used to review and score your application during OVW's peer review process. Use all available assistance in the process of putting together your application, to include OVW staff and TA providers. Pay close attention to the solicitation, keeping in mind application registration and submission dates. Do not wait until the last day to upload your application. Grant managers do not work 24/7, so if you experience a problem after normal working hours, it could mean all of your hard work was for nothing. Ensure that each section is completely addressed, even if it feels redundant. Be sure to include section headers. Number all pages. Limit the usage of acronyms included in the application. Make sure as you attach various documents for uploading, they are the final version and contain the corresponding document. Upload each attachment and provide a simple, clear, and concise title. For example, what is preferred is titles such as FY 2020 Program Narrative, FY 2020 Budget Narrative, FY 2020 Abstract, FY 2020 Summary Data Sheet. Please review the solicitation carefully and contact the Improving Criminal Justice Program with any questions regarding the solicitation by emailing ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov or calling OVW at 202-307-6026. If you need technical assistance with grants.gov, please contact the grants.gov applicant support line at 1-800 518-4726. This concludes the FY 2020 ICJR pre-application information section.